Old Grognard says, let's learn how the Climb Walls thieving skill and climbing rules in general work in 2nd edition AD&D. This video started out just being about the Climb Walls thieving skill, but to understand Climb Walls, we need to look at the rules for climbing in general. This game's climbing mechanics may seem overly detailed and complicated. However, they are only as complicated as the DM wants them to be. The DM can always ignore the crunchier bits and just have a player roll and poof, the wall is scaled. Since climbing is handled like a thieving skill regardless of a character's class, here's a quick overview of thieving skills for those that aren't familiar with how they work. Thieving skills differ from non-weapon proficiencies in that they are represented by a percentage chance of success instead of a d20 roll. When using them, a percentile roll equal to or less than the skill percentage is a success, with a roll that is higher being a failure. No skill can be higher than 95% regardless of bonuses, or in other words, a roll of 96 to 100 is always a failure. With that introduction out of the way, let's dive into Climb Walls. The text describing the Climb Walls skill is on page 40 of the PHB. It's short enough that I'll just read it rather than paraphrasing. Although everyone can climb rocky cliffs and steep slopes, the thief is far superior in this ability. Not only do they have a better climbing percentage than most other characters, they can also climb most surfaces without tools, rope, or devices. Only the thief can climb smooth and very smooth surfaces without climbing gear. Of course, the thief is very limited in their actions while climbing. They are unable to fight or effectively defend themselves. This is great, but what about the climbing percentage of most other characters? How do we know how fast we climb? Or what about the different types of surfaces, or using climbing gear? To answer these questions, we need to go to page 122 in chapter 14 of the PHB and look at the section titled Climbing. I'll read some of it and try to paraphrase the rest. The first paragraph tells us this. Although thieves have specialized climbing abilities, all characters are able to climb to some degree or another. Climbing ability is divided into 3 categories: thief, mountaineer, and unskilled. Thieves are the only characters that can climb rough, smooth, or very smooth surfaces without ropes or tools. They also climb at twice the rate of other characters and have the lowest chance of falling. The DM may also include the bard in this category, since they have the Climb Walls skill, and on page 42 it says they can climb without using tools like the thief can. However, it doesn't say that they have the double climb rate. Again, this is up to the DM. Mountaineers are characters that have the mountaineering non-weapon proficiency, or are deemed to be mountaineers if the proficiency system isn't being used. Mountaineers have a higher climbing percentage than unskilled characters, which we'll see in a minute when we look at table 65. They can climb rough, smooth, and very smooth surfaces if they have tools like rope and pittons. And, according to the description of the mountaineering skill on page 61 of the PHB, can assist unskilled characters with climbing if they lead the way and place the pittons for others to use. It doesn't actually say what bonus they give other characters, but if you take into account the time it takes for the mountaineer to set everything up for the other characters following them, then I think the 10% bonus per slot isn't unreasonable. Unskilled is the category everyone else falls into. They can't use climbing tools and have the lowest percent chance of success on table 65, which we'll look at extensively in the next part of this section. After we determine what category a character falls into, we consult table 65 to determine their base chance of success. We apply any modifiers from table 66, and this gives us our final percent chance of success. I'll insert an old Grognard observation and opinion here. If we look at the armor modifiers on table 66, they're different than the ones listed under the thief class on table 29, page 39. The ones on table 29 are more severe than on table 66. I don't think a thief should have a higher penalty than everyone else, so I would use the penalties in the climbing section for everyone, including the thief. But that's just me. As always, you do what you feel is right for you and your table. The racial modifiers are the same as the ones on page 39, so just be careful not to apply them twice. Two other modifiers that are interesting are the encumbrance modifier and the modifier for being injured. The encumbrance modifier is 5% for each category of encumbrance beyond unencumbered. The rules for encumbrance are on page 76 through 79 if you want to look them up. The penalty for being injured is a 10% penalty to characters that are below 1/2 their full hit points. So now that we know how to figure out a character's climbing percentage, when do we roll? The DM should have players roll a climbing check if their characters are trying to climb 10 feet or more. If they are successful, they can continue climbing. If they fail, they're not able to climb under the current conditions. They can try again if the conditions improve or they move to a significantly different location. Here's the example the book gives. For example, Bronvrow the gnome is an unskilled climber. Her normal chance of success is 25%, 40 minus 15 for being a gnome. She has been cut off from the rest of her party by a rugged cliff, 50 feet high. Fortunately, the cliff is dry and the rock seems solid. She makes an attempt, but a 49 is rolled on the percentile dice. She cannot climb the cliff. Then one of her friends up above remembers to lower a rope. With the rope, Bronvrow can again try the climb since her percentage chance is now 80%. A 27 is rolled and she makes the ascent. If a climb is more than 100 feet or takes more than one turn, which in this game is 10 combat rounds or 10 minutes, the DM may require additional checks. How often you make these is up to the DM, but keep in mind that the text says, characters who fail a check could fall a very long way, so it is wise to carry ropes and tools. Now that we know how to figure out climbing percentages and when to roll them, how do we know how fast we climb? On page 123, we consult table 67. It shows the climbing rates for different surfaces, and in the text below it explains what the different surfaces are. The main point I want to make here is that the numbers shown for climbing rates aren't how fast a character climbs, but rather are multipliers to the character's regular movement in feet. For example, a human has a movement rate of 12. A rope and wall that is dry has a move listed as 2. Therefore, the human can climb at a rate of 24 feet per round. If they were a thief, that would be doubled to 48 feet per round. Characters climb down at the same rate that they climb up, with one exception. If a rope is set by a mountaineer and held at the bottom, a character can rappel down the rope at the rate equal to their normal dungeon movement. So the human in our example from earlier can rappel down a rope at a rate of 120 feet per minute. They make a climbing check for this with a 50% bonus. If the end of the rope is unsecured, they can still rappel, but the bonus is reduced to 30%. If a character fails this roll, it's up to the DM what happens and how much damage they take. The last two things I'm going to cover are actions while climbing and how climbing tools work. Spellcasters can only cast spells if in a steady position, sometimes with the aid of other characters. It's up to the DM what you have to do to get this to work. All climbing characters lose the benefit of dexterity bonuses and shields to their armor class, and may be subject to modifiers for being attacked from behind. They also suffer a -2 penalty to attack and damage rolls and to saving throws as well. If they are attacked from above, the attacker gets a +2 bonus to their attack rolls, but if they are attacked from below, the attacker gets a -2 penalty to their attack roll. Characters can't use two-handed weapons while climbing, although the DM might allow it if the character is on a ledge or otherwise braced to do so, sort of like how spellcasting works. If a character takes damage while climbing, they must make a climbing check. If they are roped, they spend a round regaining their balance. If they aren't roped, they fall. Speaking of rope and climbing tools, there are a couple other things climbing tools can do besides allow us to climb certain surfaces and rappel. If a character is roped, they can only fall as far as the rope allows. If there are pittons involved, they can't fall further than twice the distance to the last pitton. However far they fall, they are subject to falling damage, and there is a 15% chance that the pitton gives way. Climbers can also rope themselves together where they are connected by the same rope in case someone falls. If the characters are roped together and one of them falls, the character on either side of them must make a climbing check at -10. If more characters fall as a result of failed rolls, then the remaining characters next to them must make a climbing check at -10 for each character that has fallen. This repeats until all of the climbing checks are successful or everyone falls. Here are some old grognard afterthoughts on everything we've covered. This rule set may seem overly complex or detailed, but again, it's only as complicated as the DM wants it to be. The DM can ignore most of what's here most of the time. But on the other hand, if players want to do an assault on a bandit camp by rappelling down a cliff face with archers giving them covering fire, the DM has the tools to run the scenario. If the players decide to scale a sheer cliff to get into a fortress the back way, the DM has the tools to make it happen. If they get attacked halfway up the cliff, the DM, well, you get the idea. Here's a list of the references I used in this episode, so if you want to look things up for yourself or read them later, here they are. That covers the Climb Walls Thieving skill, Mountaineering, and the climbing rules in general in 2nd edition AD&D. Thanks for watching. Quivor, the Hermetha Philosopher of War, and I would like to wish you a wonderful rest of your day.